Welcome back to another Policing Insight podcast and interview. Today I'm absolutely delighted to be with Superintendent Marcus Noden from Greater Manchester Police. My name is Brendan from Blue Light, and ordinarily I'm helping support people for the police recruitment process, for promotion boards, but today I'm here on behalf of Policing Insight TV, and today we're going to look at brave and courageous leadership, what that actually means for constables, for sergeants, for inspectors, other leaders within the police service. And so, again, on the theme of our proudest moments in policing, delighted to be able to speak to Marcus Noden, Superintendent from Greater Manchester Police, about one of his proud moments in policing and what this actually means for leaders within the police service. So, Marcus, welcome
Thank you.
To Policing TV. I think it's one of the things that people probably wrestle with a little bit as leaders, in that how do we enable that sense of purpose? How do we ensure that our officers, when they join, continue to have that sense of purpose, that sense of meaning, so that they're coming home from work every day thinking, made a difference today? And so I know we've already talked about one of your proud moments in policing. I'd love you to be able to share that with me. And I know it goes back a while. So Marcus, one of your proud moments perhaps actually before we continue, you should actually just say who you are and where you work for and what you do.
Thanks, Brendan. Yes, I'm Marcus Noden. I'm a Superintendent in Greater Manchester Police. I'm currently the Operations Superintendent in Trafford, in the Trafford area of Greater Manchester, and have been for coming up to about 18 months. Prior to that, I've got quite a lengthy experience as a superintendent, and I've worked on a number of the district areas across Greater Manchester, but also I've worked in performance, and previously I was a Chief of Staff to the Chief Constable, Sir Stephen Watson, which was an absolute privileged role and a really enjoyable one as well.
I bet there's some stories you could tell there.
keep my lips zipped.
Yeah. What happens on the 11th floor stays on the 11th floor. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's dive back into Marcus's world then. So, Marcus, tell me about a proud moment that you'd love to share with everyone.
So, when you posed me this question, Brendan, I really had to rack my brain. Not because I didn't have any proud moments. I have so many in policing. I've been in policing for coming up to 27 years, and inevitably, whether it be success in promotion exams, dealing with particular incidents, meeting particular people, or helping others. There's so many different proud moments I could talk about, but the one I want to talk about today is actually a very, very early arrest that I made about 25 years ago, actually, when I was in my first 12 months of service, around 2000, the year 2000. And whilst it wasn't my first arrest, I was out of the tutor company period, very much independent patrol. It was quite a significant arrest in terms of the individual. He was an extremely dangerous offender. He'd previously been convicted of burglary and rape, and he was quite a nasty offender. And he'd been highlighted on various bulletin briefings. Intelligence briefing. So I'd clocked him, I clocked his name, I clocked his face, I knew the area that he lived. It was part of my footbeat at the time, and I was very keen to try and track him down and hopefully bring him to justice for offences that I believed he would still be committing. And that actually happened one night. So I was out on patrol. It was an overlap shift, so it was a late evening, early hours of a weekend, and I was going around my beat area of Withington, the South Manchester area of Withington, and I heard a burglar alarm just around the corner. I thought I'll go and inquire, and as I did so, I came around the corner. I saw a chap literally in the lounge window drawing the curtains. I looked at him, he looked at me. I think we were both as startled as each other. I saw that he'd been piling a load of stolen goods up by the back window with a view to taking them away with him. And at that point, the chase was on, quite frankly. I called on the radio for assistance, but at that point I was on my own, and I was a lot younger then and quite a lot fitter. So I leapt round to a ginnel at the rear of the house, and thankfully I chose the right way, because he came clattering round through the passageway, and the chase was on. Now, I was a rugby player back in the day as well, and I'm still quite proud of the rugby tackle that I effected on him. Managed to detain him, arrested him. It was a successful arrest, and eventually it was a successful conviction following a guilty plea, and he received 2 years in custody, which was fantastic. And so in terms of that arrest, extremely proud. It's still one that sits with me. It's not very often an individual or a police officer catches an individual in the act of burgling. We clearly arrest lots of burglars along the way and have forensic evidence, etc., to follow on. But when you actually catch them in the act, it's a different story altogether, and it's not one that happens for every police officer out there. So that's certainly one that stands in my memory. I think, yes, that individual incident was one that I've still got the adrenaline pumping through me, actually, and I do remember it very well. But actually, at that point, as I said, I was early in my service. I was still finding my feet, I think it's fair to say, in policing, and a lot like many student officers these days, I was quite bogged down with handovers, files, crimes having to be investigated, and it's not always the excitement that you get on a daily shift. And so when an incident like that happens, it instills this sense of purpose around what policing's about, why I joined the police in the first instance, and what I wanted to do within my policing career going forward. So it was really important to me, that incident. It probably mapped the next sort of the progression through the next few years of my career. It certainly enhanced, I suppose, reputation and profile within my team and supervisors. It gave me the confidence to work on intelligence-led, proactive type policing activities over months and then years ahead, both as a constable but also as a supervisor and beyond. So yeah, that one incident very early in the career, not my first arrest, but it was certainly one of my best early arrests, and it's a proud moment, without doubt.
Awesome. I love that. I absolutely love it. And I think sometimes, that's something you're going to remember forever. Like you never
Absolutely.
Forget it, will you?
Oh, it's a story that I tell to lots of people. Absolutely.
Oh no, not again. Not the rugby tackle story again.
Absolutely, yeah.
As you were talking, I was thinking it's not often we actually catch someone in the act. Would you believe my very first arrest was someone climbing out of a back window who'd just committed a burglary?
Brilliant.
And I remember thinking, this is exactly what I joined for.
Yeah.
I can still remember looking at him, and he's down. I pulled him out the window, put him on the ground, and he's looking at me, and he's like, and I'm like, oh yeah, arrest. My very first arrest, I didn't know what to do, and my caution came out all wrong. I remember putting him in the back of the police car, and the traffic officer I was with saying, hadn't you better arrest him properly now? And so, but I went back to the police station, and everyone was like, oh, you're lucky so-and-so, and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, yeah, isn't it always like this? This is like an episode of The Bill for me. I just thought, this is amazing. And I can still remember it. And so what I want to explore then, Marcus, if it's okay, because I think every officer's got that proud moment. But what I'm really interested in is, okay, so that led to you pursuing a certain path in policing. That first arrest for me taught me how proactive I could be, and I ended up in like really proactive intelligence roles. Like, eventually I worked in a special branch in Bermuda, dealing with international narcotics and money laundering.
Right.
And that may have been like one of the first stepping stones to this. And I think every officer's got their first stepping stone that enables them to be the best version of themselves they can be in their career. So I'm just wondering now about, your thoughts on the circumstances that would enable that to happen. I mean, what can you and other leaders do to enable that to happen, as opposed to just thinking my role is just files, my role is just, answering the calls, and those are all important things to do. But of course, there's this sense of purpose and meaning behind an arrest like that. How do we enable more of that to happen, and how can future sergeants and inspectors and chief inspectors and superintendents go about enabling the culture that brings more of that to happen?
I think, well, for me, there's probably three areas that can be focused on. I mean, one is about fostering that intelligence-led, policing approach, a proactive approach, whether that be on a response team, a neighbourhood team, CID office, or whatever. I think it's fair to say that student officers at this moment in time, perhaps a year or so into their service, are perhaps not finding that excitement that perhaps they joined for. They're perhaps questioning the reasons why they're in policing, their sense of purpose. So for me, it's really important as whether it's supervisor or manager or a command team in charge of a policing district, that they should be really encouraging the proactive approach, because whilst we might not have incidents, as I've talked about, every day, certainly individuals won't have them every day, that once or twice, even in a career, can make the difference between the motivation to stay and do the policing work, or look at other opportunities and avenues. And so encouragement around intelligence-led and proactive policing, really, really important. The second bit is actually, I suppose it's reward and recognition, around recognising and celebrating those early wins, or those small wins. I didn't, in terms of that particular arrest, I didn't get any commendations or anything like that. But actually, what I did do is get a couple of pats on the back by colleagues and supervisors. I got an extremely dangerous individual back in prison, which was enough for me anyway. That was the prize at the end of it, and it gave me a sense of well-being. It gave me a sense of purpose and that focus. So I suppose, again, from a supervisory and managerial perspective, reward and recognition is so important at whatever level. And I think sometimes we become a bit fixated on large-scale award celebrations, award ceremonies, and not every job's going to fit within the criteria that we set. A pat on the back, or a few lines on an email, or just a quick word to a supervisor or an inspector, just to say how well an individual's done in their work on a particular job. It goes a long, long way, and it really does go right the way through that individual's career, and it perhaps unseen by others, but it really does mean a lot. And I think from that perspective, we can almost reinforce individuals' commitment and confidence as well, and certainly elevate confidence. And in that particular example that I've given, I know, and I remember well, that my confidence within the group that I was working in, my confidence in terms of my ability around policing, around proactive policing, but also around bringing offenders to justice was really improved, increased, and it was definitely significant for me, and I'm sure it would be significant for others in a similar circumstance. And then, I suppose, on a wider scale, as a senior officer in Greater Manchester Police for quite some time, and someone who has had opportunities around leadership, around development opportunities, which I've taken over many, many years. Supervisory and managerial responsibility is about identifying young talent at an early stage and then bringing them through, providing opportunities, providing encouragement and support, giving individuals who show potential and show initiative the opportunity and the space to be able to create their own, policing operation, whether that's focusing on antisocial behaviour, on serious acquisitive crime, or vehicle crime, whatever it may be. It's providing those early stages of those in the early stages of their career to be able to develop and progress, because that's where we get our future leaders. And from my perspective, someone who's at the latter end of a policing career, it's part of my job to actually identify and nurture incoming and up-and-coming talent, because they're the ones going to be looking after me and obviously yourself in the future, and we want to make them the best people possible. So those are the three areas I would say that that incident probably triggers for me.
Well, I love those, and in terms of that reward and recognition, we'll bat some ideas around that if that's okay. But I'm just reminded of, if I point up there to, that looks like some kind of certificate there.
Yeah.
That is a divisional commander's commendation for an off-duty arrest I made. And that's from 1987. 1987, and I've
Wow.
still got it framed on my. This is like my little ego wall of things that I've done that I'm really proud of. I'm proud of that. I was looking at it the other day, actually, thinking I can still remember that moment when I saw those two boys. They were just like 15, 16-year-olds, but they were taking fog lamps off a car, and yeah, I'm not going to go into the arrest. But like, it's a proud moment. It's that reward and recognition.
Absolutely, yeah.
Let's dive deeper into some of these then, because what I'd like to do, if we could, is get some really good practical things that people could deliver today. So, for those leaders within the service who are watching this, listening to this, some ideas that they could actually put in place that don't cost anything, that don't need a new policy, that just need them to go, yeah, let's do that. And then just like start doing it tomorrow. Or to recognize those who are actually doing these things as being like, no, I thought I was the only one doing this. Actually, this is good practice. This is something that's really, really useful to do. So we were actually talking earlier a little bit about this, about like encouraging Intel-led operations, or the very thing that you did. You built up an intelligence picture of this individual. You went deliberately looking for this type of individual. You found him. You arrested him. In prison for 2 years. Brilliant.
Yeah.
What I think sometimes police officers can get a bit stuck in a groove of like they go to work, comms send them to jobs. The sergeants and inspectors are helping manage all of that. A critical incident crops up. They deal with that. We deal with it really well. But then sometimes maybe forgetting that actually, how do we actually create the space? A deliberate, systematic way of creating the space for perhaps two officers on a daily basis, or one officer on a daily basis, to do this kind of work. This for me is like brave, courageous leadership, as opposed to just like, no, we're just here to clear the screen of jobs. We know that there's certain individuals out there harming the community. We know that if we apply the right resources to them, we can actually bring them to justice. That's what we want to do. It's that sense of purpose and meaning that we've always wanted. Well, let's create it. Let's create that opportunity. So what can we do there, Marcus, to actually create that opportunity? Something that people could do now, actually, if they were listening to it and they're going to work in 2 hours' time. Like, right, I'm going to do that now.
Well, I mean, resource pressures are clearly there. I see it every day here on the district, and it is challenging. And unfortunately, that proactive capacity often is put to the sidelines whilst we're having to react and respond to incidents coming in. However, I think there's plenty of opportunity, and we do it here when we can as best as possible in Trafford, to identify perhaps a partnership, a pairing as an arrest van or arrest car at whatever time throughout the shift, and they are dedicated to going after wanted people. There's one example, and we've talked about this previously, but when the challenge comes about having resource issues and not being able to manage that particular ring fencing, well, actually, the challenge back is, they could have reported sick and we would have had to deal with them anyway. So actually, we've got 2 additional individuals there to go out, be proactive, identify wanteds. There are plenty of them, unfortunately, and take the initiative there. It could be the same for traffic operations, exactly the same. It's really important. I think we have tutor units in Greater Manchester, and in that respect, really effective, because what it does allow is time and space for student officers to learn, develop with their tutor constables, and things like traffic initiatives, things like going after wanted individuals, things like supporting teams, neighbourhood teams, for example, in pursuing some of their own local community priorities, are possible, and as a consequence, people can learn, develop, and improve over time. So there are small opportunities, and whilst I appreciate the resourcing pressures that all forces are receiving at the moment, or suffering at the moment, it is possible to identify small pockets, individuals who are interested, they have the motivation, they have the drive, and we need to capture that and nurture that, because otherwise we lose it, and if we lose it, then we have nothing left, and that's the challenge of all leaders that we face. In terms of reward and recognition, from a district perspective, we have a really structured and quite a robust reward and recognition process, which has been developed over a period of time, where there are nomination submissions from anybody, but primarily supervisors and managers, into a central pool. There is a reward and recognition panel. It consists of SLT membership as well as others, including the likes of Federation rep, etc. And we're really proactive on reward and recognition, whether that be it could be a simple thank you and well done, it could be a good work minute, it could be a district commander's commendation, or it could be submission to force awards ceremony and for consideration of the higher levels at chief constable level. But again, really well received by the teams. We have a district reward and recognition and award ceremony process every year, and it is a real motivator without a shadow of a doubt for both individuals and teams, and it's really nice to see that people are encouraged and are striving to be noticed, be identified, and be rewarded as a consequence.
Yeah, I like that. I love that reward and recognition. I think just on that sort of I think a lot of forces probably will have a reward and recognition scheme, but I think if I cast my mind back to some of those moments where officers have been rewarded and recognised, okay, we've got that scheme in place, but I still remember it. I'm going to mention his name as well, and I hope he's proud to hear this. But do you remember John O'Hare?
Very much so, yeah.
Yeah, he was my chief inspector at Stretford, many moons ago, and I remember once we did exactly that. It was like we designed the time and we actually created a job for it, so that comms were like, oh, okay, right, those two officers are assigned to that particular job, to go and get an individual who was top of our wanted list, who was harming the community, and we gave them the time and space to actually research the intelligence behind that individual. And this was someone who everyone was saying, oh, we're never going to catch him, he's so slippery, blah, 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 blah. And then they shouted it up like 7:15 in the morning, one in custody. We'd got him, and we actually got him with stolen property from a burglary that night. And
brilliant.
That was as a neighbourhood team, and the proactive team were like, yeah, but we were going to progress that, blah, 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 blah. I remember John O'Hare just going, yeah, but you didn't. So, and the first thing he said was, where are those two arresting officers? Where are those two arresting officers? And he took the time, and I'm sure this is something you do as well, he took the time straight away to go, right, they're in custody at the moment. Where did John go? Straight to custody. Straight to custody. And they did get written up for a good work minute, and they got the good work minute, but I know what made the big difference to them. It was John O'Hare going to the custody office.
Absolutely, yeah.
Hey, tell me about what you've just done. I've just heard about, tell me a story. It's like, he didn't say tell me a story, but like, and I can still remember that. And I still remember that moment thinking, that's leadership.
Yeah, that's absolutely. Leadership. I mean, John O'Hare was a fantastic leader, a pleasure to work with over the years. But you're right, it's that early contact, it's the interest and the involvement as much as anything. I think that holds a huge amount of weight. Yeah, as you say, the good work minutes, the commendations and everything else, lovely, nice to have, and can be put on the wall in the frame for the future. But it's the timeliness of that early inquiry, early thank you, early praise, and a well done goes a long way, certainly.
I wasn't intending on talking about this, but it's just reminded me of something else he did, and I think this is something John did that was really systematic and deliberate, although it didn't seem like it. So, because once he'd been to speak to them, the next question he had for me as the neighbourhood inspector was like, how did you do that? And so I told him the story about how I created the time and space for them, made sure comms were aware, we created a job for it, so comms were like, okay, those two officers are allocated to this. And I do remember having that same conversation with one of my sergeants who was saying, yeah, but boss, we've got all of these things to do, blah, 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 blah. And I said, yeah, but what would you do if they went off sick today? Would you manage?
Yeah.
All right, great. Well, imagine they're off sick. But they're not. And so what John did was he actually asked me, and this is a sort of that deliberate, how do I enable more of this to happen? what did you do to enable this to happen? And I told him the story, and he went, that's great, do more of it. What help do you need from me? And like, I don't need any help at all. Just knowing that you have given it the thumbs up, that's fine for me. We'll go do more. And so I think there's something there about, I don't know how you feel about this, Marcus, like that reward and recognition, sometimes asking those questions of the officers, how did you do this? And how, as a leader, can I support you to do more of that thing?
It's a conversation, without doubt.
Well, listen, Marcus, thank you so much for your time today. Very, very, very much appreciated. I know your time's really precious, so thank you again for that time. And for anyone who's watching this again, if you've got a proud moment you'd love to share, do get in touch, and we'd love to talk to you. We want to make this a theme in policing, because I think in policing there's too much focus on things that aren't going well, and there should be a bigger focus on things that are going well and celebrating those things. Even if it's not just, is it? It's like a memory you're always going to have. It's like my memory, like up there. It's on there in a little commendation. It's never going to go away. These are the things that we'll carry with us for the rest of our careers. Awesome to speak to you again, Marcus.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.